Hello folks, in this video we will see how we can expose Docker daemon over an API and secure it with SSL certificates. So we have several different ways to do that, but I have chosen securing Docker daemon with SSL certificate. So in this video, let's try and do that. There are few prerequisites for it. So the first one is you need to have two different VMs with Docker installed in it. At least one of it should have Docker daemon installed, and another we will install Docker client. So for the demonstration purpose, I have two machines here, machine 1 and machine 2. So in machine 1, I will be installing Docker daemon, and machine 2 we will use it as a Docker client or Docker CLI. So if you don't have it installed already, you can install it with yum install docker command just like that. But I have it installed, and how can I verify? Which docker d command will show me that this is the Docker daemon present and I don't have to install it right now. So machine 1 is with the Docker d. So I'm good with machine 1. Coming to machine 2, I need to verify if Docker CLI is installed. So just use this command, which docker, which will show me that this is the Docker CLI that is present. So if you don't have it, again, do the yum install docker, which will install both Docker daemon and Docker CLI. But we will use machine 2 as CLI, and we will use machine 1 for Docker daemon. All right, that's prerequisite 1. Moving on to the second one, we need to have root access on one of the machine, which we are going to configure it as Docker daemon. So in this case, we are using machine 1 as Docker daemon. So we are going to need to be root in this machine. So I'm already root user in this machine. All right, moving on, we need to have OpenSSL installed in the machine that we are going to configure Docker daemon. So that is machine 1. So in my case, I already have OpenSSL installed. I can confirm the same thing with this command, which OpenSSL. This will show me that this binary is present already on my machine. If you don't have it, then you could easily go to this Git repository that you can see on my screen, and you could clone and you could install from the source code. So I will show you that as well. If you have it already, you can skip for like a minute or so. I am just going to copy this Git repository. I'm moving to machine 1 where I'm going to configure Docker daemon, and you should not be a root user for 2 steps that I'm going to do, and then you need to switch to root user while installing it finally. So that's the recommendation from OpenSSL. The same thing, you can find it in their official documentation. Yeah, in here you can see that it's recommended to compile and test OpenSSL with normal user privileges and use administrative privileges only for the final step or installation step. Okay, all right. What you could do is you could clone this repository into your machine 1 or where you are going to configure your Docker daemon. So I will first become a different user. I am using Vagrant machines on these systems, so I'm a Vagrant user now. Let me go to temp directory and I will clone that repository in here. So you can do it with git clone. Here is the URL. So this is the command that will download the Git repository into your current directory. So I'm currently inside temp. I already have it cloned on my current directory, OpenSSL. So once cloned, move into that directory and list out all the files and make sure that you have this configure file present. Then you could go to this documentation that they have provided and use this command to configure it. /configure, prefix is /opt/OpenSSL. This is where your OpenSSL is going to be installed. So if you want to change it, you can change it here. So for me, this is fine. So I'm just going to do the same thing here. But I'm not going to do it because I already have done it and I have configured OpenSSL. So I don't have to do this. Once that is finished, then you could type this command and hit enter. So once that is finished, then you need to switch back to root user. Sudo, I'm just going to switch to root user and go back to the same directory. And again, I'm just going to list these files. Yeah, this is where you ran the previous command. I'm going to enter this command to finally make the installation. Make install. So this will install OpenSSL into the directories where you configured, that is opt OpenSSL earlier, right? So in my case, I'm not going to do it because I already have done it. After that, you can confirm the same thing with which OpenSSL, and it should show something like this, which confirms that you have OpenSSL binary with you. Let me go back to my home directory. Right. So these are the 3 prerequisites. Now it's time to dive into step number 1. In step number 1, we are going to generate SSL certificates from the OpenSSL tool that we just installed right now on Docker host or the machine 1. Then in step number 2, what we are going to do is the SSL certificates will be generated in step number 1, right? We are going to configure Docker daemon to use them. So that's step number 2. On step number 3, we will configure Docker client to use the client certificates in order to communicate with this Docker host. Okay. Step number 1, we have a Git repository for you. You could download this script and simply run it, which will generate SSL certificates. So before you do that, you need to have the host name ready for your machine 1. If you don't have the host name, no need to worry. You could give some random name as well. And I will show you on step number 3 how you can make it work. So if you have the host name set for your server, that's absolutely fine. You could give the same when you're prompted when you run this script. Okay, for now, I'm going to clone this repository. Go to the base folder, and in here, I'm going to copy this URL. And let me go to machine 1. This is where I want to generate SSL certificates. So let me go to temp directory. Let me clone it with git clone, and let me paste that git URL, which will clone that repository. And you can list it, and here you can see that it is cloned. So move inside that directory and see what's inside. And you have one more directory, so move inside again. If you see here, we have that script that we need to run. Okay, so let's make it executable by giving this command chmod +x secure docker daemon.sh. So this will make this script executable. Let me clear out screen, and you can see here now it turned green. Now that is executable. I will give this // and the script name to run this script. So once you run the script, it is going to ask for 2 prompts. The first prompt is going to be for setting password for your SSL certificates. And the second prompt is to enter the host name of this machine, the Docker host. It doesn't matter if you don't have the host name configured. You could give some random name, and then you could configure the DNS resolution on the Docker client, which will again work for you, right? So in my case, I have host name set to machine 1. It could be different in your case. But anyway, I'm going to give different name to show you that method as well. So I'm going to run this script, and we are asked to enter a password that is to be set for the SSL certificates that we are going to generate. But in my case, I'm going to just hit enter, which will not set any password for my SSL certificates. Okay. Now, for the second prompt, it's asking for the Docker's host name. Like I said, I have machine 1 as the host name set for this machine 1, but I'm going to give a different name. Let's say Docker host. You could give any different name you like. Or if you have the host names and DNS resolutions configured on your systems, then absolutely that is fine. You could give that same host name. So for my case, I'm just giving it a different name just for demonstration purposes. And then I'm hitting enter. So once this is finished, this will automatically generate the SSL certificates in your home directory. So let me home directory /.docker directory. So if I list out the files here, you can see there are certificate files generated over here. So once the certificates are generated, let's go back to our post. So we completed these 3 steps. So that is pretty much the step 1. So coming to step 2, we need to configure the Docker daemon to use these certificates, right? So on machine 1, before I configure Docker, let me see if Docker is running. systemctl status Docker. So currently Docker is not running on my system. In your machine, if it is running, you could just easily systemctl stop Docker command. You can issue this command to stop the Docker daemon, right? All right. Now, what's the second command? We need to edit this file. We need to edit this file and comment out the exec start line, right? So let's do that now. You can find the exec start line over here. This says this is the command. So what you could do is you could go to insert mode and just insert a pound symbol or hash symbol there that will comment out this exec start line. Now escape shift colon right quit to save it and quit out of the editor. And then next step is to create this directory, which I'm going to do it now, and create this file inside that directory. The file name is, I call it docker_override.conf. You could give any other name you like. Let me edit this file, and I need to add these 2 lines to override that configuration default exec start for Docker daemon, right? Let me explain a little bit here. So exec start defines how the Docker daemon should be started, right? So in here you are specifying that for local communication you need to use this Unix socket, and communication over API or the interface, your network interface, you need this configuration over here. And also you have specified that TLS verify, which will ensure that the Docker daemon will only be accessible on your interface if it is using TLS, right? So after that, you are providing the full paths to these certificates. So server cert certificate and TLS cert and CA cert key files. Make sure that you are giving the full paths. Also, you could change the port over here. I have given 2376. You could change it to any port you like, but it should not be used by any other process already, right? Okay, I'm going to save this, shift colon WQ. So I saved that file, and the next step is to restart the daemon because we have changed the configuration for the Docker. So it's a good practice to reload the system daemon, right? So next we need to start up the Docker. Copy that, paste it here. Start Docker. It is taking a little bit time. Yes, it is started. So you can confirm if it has started properly with systemctl status Docker. So it says yes, it is running, and at the end you can notice that the API is enabled for Docker daemon over this port. Perfect. Let's move on to step number 3. So in step number 3, we need to configure machine number 2, the Docker CLI or Docker client, in order to use the Docker daemon with SSL certificates. So in order to do that, we need to copy these 3 files from machine 1 to machine number 2. So in machine 1, these files are present under /root/.docker directory. So for this, I'm going to utilize SFTP on machine number 2, but you could transfer them via any other means that you like, maybe rsync-it, WinSCP, or SCP, any other tools for that matter. So let me just use SFTP now and log into that machine number 1. Let me grab the IP address of machine number 1. It is this IP, and let me paste that. It's asking me for password. Let me enter it. Now I have logged in. Let me move to /root/.docker directory, and let me list out all the files there. So these files are present, but here we need to copy these 3 files, right? So let me get that ca.pem, and let's get the cert.pem, and let's also get key.pem. So once those 3 files are downloaded, let's exit out of machine number 1, and let's list out what files I can see here. So I can see these 3 files present on my machine number 2. So now let's create a directory in here under /root. So I am at /root. So in here, let me make a directory .docker, and let me move ca.pem, cert.pem, and key.pem files inside Docker directory. Let me move inside Docker directory and confirm that they are present over there. Right. Now that we have transferred all these 3 files into machine number 2, let's move on to the next step. Add this entry on the etc hosts file for name resolution. In step number 1, if you remember, we gave a random name like Docker host. So if you had not done that and you have all the DNS configurations present, you don't have to do this. But if you don't have that and you need to configure, you had given Docker host like I did as the host name during the script execution step, then you need to do this. So you need to edit this file and add this line, but make sure to change your IP address here with the machine 1's IP address, right? So let me edit that quickly. On machine number 2, I'm editing the etc hosts file. Let me go to the last line and insert mode. Let me copy paste that. So in my case, this is the Docker host or the machine number 1's IP address. And this is the name that I had given during the certificate generation. Make sure that these two are correspondent to your case. So let me save and quit out of that editor. And let me move on to the next step now. After you configure this, you need to set few environment variables in order for Docker to recognize these settings, right? So you need to set Docker host to this remote host. So in here, I'm saying Docker host. So in reality, this Docker host will be resolved to this IP address. And this is the port number that Docker host is listening on machine number 1 or this IP address, right? So for that, if you had changed it during the step number 2, then you need to change here as well. So for me, this is good. And this is to enable the TLS verification. And then in here, I'm providing the path where all my client certificates are present. In your case, if you have copied it to a different location, please change that to correct location. So I'm just going to copy all this and let me paste it one by one. Okay. Now they're all set. This is pretty much it. We have configured the client. We have configured the Docker daemon. And now it's time to check if everything is working properly or not. So once you added the name resolution in /etc/hosts, you can also confirm if it's working properly by using the ping command. Ping -c, say some 4 packets, 4 pings to Docker host. Make sure that it is responding properly like this for you. Otherwise, you have made some mistakes, or you have not copied the IP address, or you have not given the name properly in here if you have gotten any error. If you are getting the response like this, then that means you have configured so far correctly and you should be good to check the Docker. So let's see Docker PS. Now I can see I don't have any containers running on machine number 1. That's why it's not displaying anything, but I can list out all the images. And I can see several images here which are present on the Docker host or machine number 1, right? I can also confirm the same thing on machine number 1. Let me do the same thing, because when you install Docker, by default, it will also have the client installed in it. So we can perform the same thing here also. So Docker images should give you the same images that you have on Docker machine 1. So this is how you can configure Docker daemon on machine number 1. It is exposed over some port with SSL enabled, and any Docker client, or you could also use the curl command that I will show you next to communicate with that daemon over SSL on that port secure like this. Alright, we have one more way to confirm this. I mean, we don't have to always use the Docker commands to ensure this. We can also use this curl command. In other words, you could also use just this much, but it just gives more visibility when you add JQ to pass all the JSON that it returns, right? So curl, and here you can see that Docker host is what is being resolved to machine number 1, and on port 2376 images /JSON. This will list all the images, and you could give other commands like PS or something like that. You have a extensive list you can find on Docker API. You could find the documentation in official Docker documentation site. So I'm just gonna execute this command here. Let's see what response that we get on the machine number 2. Yep, we are getting all the JSON neatly formatted. If you don't have the JQ installed, you could just remove this pipe symbol and JQ -r and dot. So that will just display like a dump. Let me show you that as well. Yeah, you can see here. So this is just dumping everything, all the JSON file. So it's just makes it easier to read this one rather than that. So this confirms that we have successfully configured Docker daemon with SSL enabled on port, whatever port, right? So this concludes the video. If you have any questions, just put that in the comments. I hope it helped you in some way. Thank you.